Biden didn't somehow make his way here to Orange County. Also, today, a man was arrested for a shooting spree at a salon in Dallas. The people that were shot were Asian Americans. The man who was arrested was Black. So we have a Black man, Darrell Brooks, who mowed down people in Waukesha, no Biden. We have an Asian man of Chinese descent who shot a bunch of people at an Orange County church, no Biden. We have a Black man who shot 3 people working at a Asian American salon, no Biden. And when Biden was in Buffalo, he almost repeated that both sides lie. Watch this.
I've seen too many times the deadly and destructive violence this ideology unleashes. We heard the chants, "You will not replace us," in Charlottesville, Virginia. I wasn't going to run, as the senator knows, again for president. When I saw those people coming out of the woods of the fields in Virginia, in Charlottesville, carrying torches, shouting, "You will not replace us," accompanied by white supremacists and carrying Nazi banners, that's when I said, no. And I, honest to God, those who know me, Chuck, I wasn't going to run for certain. But I was going to be darned if I was going to let anyway. I'm going to get going.
Anyway, I'm not going to get going. So the reason Biden ran is because he had to rescue America from this racist surge. And it was him who was called to do that. Now, he didn't say, as he said in Brussels, and as he said numerous times during the campaign, and that, man, Donald Trump said that there were good people on both sides, It's a lie. Donald Trump was talking about the debate on whether or not there should be a Confederate monument in public square. Even Jake Tapper of CNN said that that's what he was talking about. Didn't say it right away, but ultimately he came around, looked at the tape again and said, Joe Biden specifically said, quote, "and I'm not talking about the white nationalists and the neo-Nazis because they should be condemned totally," close quote. And Michael Smerconish, a weekend host on CNN, reached the same conclusion. Again, not when Trump said it, but later on. So these are 2 CNN hosts who said that President Trump was referring to the debate over whether or not there should be a Confederate monument in public square. There are good, very fine people on both sides of that debate, he said. But that did not stop Joe Biden and Democrats from constantly repeating that lie. And Biden came very close to saying it today, but he didn't. Now, can we put some of this stuff in perspective? There are roughly 15,000 murders every year. I'm not counting the people that kill themselves because of suicide. Talking about 15,000 murders. There are roughly 1.3 million violent crimes in America. 6.45 million property crimes in America. So we're talking about roughly 8 million. Hate crimes, and they are up, around 10,000 recent year. That's 0.1875%. 0.1875%. Most homicides are garden variety, somebody shooting somebody else, somebody killing somebody else. And by the way, of the 15,000 homicides just now mentioned, half of them are Black victims, almost all killed by another Black person. Most murder is same race crime. Of the Blacks who are killed, roughly 95% or so are killed by other Blacks. Of the whites who are killed, roughly 85% or so of the perpetrators are in fact white. So murder is overwhelmingly a same race crime. However, there are some interracial Black-white murders every year, roughly 750. And in a given year, 500 whites will be murdered by Blacks. 250 Blacks are murdered by whites, even though whites are roughly 63% of the population. Let's not go there, though. Let's talk about the mass shootings, mass killings. Here's a chart. Let's go over it a little bit. Asians are 3.6% of the population, but 6.6% of the mass shooters. Blacks, 12.3% of the population, but 17.4% of the mass shooters are Black. Whites, 62.6% of the population, but 54.4% 95% of the mass shooters are white. In other words, as a percentage of their population, blacks commit comparatively more mass shootings, and whites, as a percentage of their population, commit comparatively less. Let's talk about hate crimes. In 2018, blacks at 13% of the population committed 24% of hate crimes. In other words, blacks are overrepresented when it comes to hate crimes. Whites, again, 63% of the population, commit 54% of hate crimes. So whites are underrepresented when it comes to the commission of hate crimes. Can we knock it off? Can we knock it off? When a racist white person kills black people like Dylan Roof did, all this anguish, all this angst, as opposed to saying, wait a minute, let's put this in perspective. There are 350 million people in America. There are going to be some racists. You're never going to eliminate that. We should do the best we can to make sure that nobody hurts anybody else. Frankly, I believe that more people should carry CCWs, but that's just me. We don't seem to have the same kind of hand-wringing when in Chicago, any given weekend, several people are killed, several people are shot. Chicago is on track for more homicides than any year since the early 1990s. And Chicago is a third black, a third white, a third Hispanic, yet 70% of the homicides in Chicago are black on black. Did Biden visit Chicago any recent weekend and commiserate with the people that were victimized? No, because it doesn't push the narrative. The narrative is that white racism is a scourge in America. White supremacists are on the rise in America. We won't talk about hate crime committed by black people. We won't talk about the disproportionate amount of murders committed by black people. We're not even talking about people like Darrell Brooks, who hasn't even been charged with a hate crime. He's the one who mowed down all those people in Waukesha, killing 6 people. Or you're going to talk about the man I just now mentioned, who has now been arrested for shooting people in the Asian American salon. And by the way, his girlfriend said this about him. He was involved in a crash with an Asian couple a couple of years ago, and since that time has had panic attacks around Asian people and was having delusions that the Asian mob was after him. The woman also said he'd been fired from a job after verbally attacking his Asian boss. So this guy has some issues. And recently in New York, there were 22 people or so arrested for hate-motivated attacks against Asian Americans. Only 2 of the 22 were white. So what are we talking about here? It is a lie that white people are going around mowing down black people. It is a lie. And Joe Biden keeps pushing it and pushing it and pushing it. And I tell you why. Because he believes he can manipulate 13% of the population, those are black people, into believing that a bunch of racists are out to get him. And by the way, Joe Biden, I'm a white savior. I wear the white hat. And these guys over here, these dastardly Republicans, they wear the black hat. So pull that lever from me. It's a lie. I'll give you another lie. There's a magazine called policemag.com, and they were talking about a survey, a poll, of people that self-described as a liberal and people who self-described as very liberal as to how many people in 2019 unarmed blacks were killed by the police. Now stay with me here. 50% of those who self-describe as very liberal, and I bet you have friends like that, 50% of those who self-describe as very liberal assume that the police killed 1,000 unarmed black men in 2019. 8% believed that the police killed 10,000 unarmed black men in 2019. Let's just talk about garden variety, self-described just liberals. 39% of them believe that the police killed 1,000 unarmed black men in 2019. 5% believe the police killed 10,000 unarmed black men in 2019. According to the Washington Post database, guess how many unarmed black men the police killed in 2019? 12. Not 10,000, not even 1,000, 12. And by the way, the police kill more unarmed whites than they kill unarmed blacks. Name one. Name one. Can't kill you. You know why? Because when an unarmed white person is killed, there's no CNN, there's no MSNBC, there's no Anderson Cooper, there's no Don Lemon, there's no Van Jones, there's no Joy Reid. They couldn't care less because it doesn't fit the script. In fact, racism has never been a less significant factor in American life. I've talked about this before. 1997, last time I was on CNN, they used to have me on pretty regularly. Maybe I shouldn't have mentioned this poll the last time I was on. 1997, Time teamed up with CNN and they did a survey of Black teenagers and white teenagers. And they asked them both the same question. Is racism a major problem in America? Not too surprisingly, both of them said yes. But then the poll did something I never seen done before. They asked the Black teenagers, is racism a big problem, a small problem, or no problem in your own daily life? 89% of the Black teens called racism a small problem or no problem in my own daily life. In fact, more Black teens than white teens, according to the survey, said that, quote, failure to take advantage of available opportunities is a bigger problem than racism, end of quote. So can we just knock it off? You think you're advancing the ball? You think you're helping America? These people on these talk shows, they're just incredible. There's a guy named Bakari Sellers. Listen to Bakari Sellers.
We're talking about racism. We're talking about this country's original sin. And what happens, and the tragedy in this, is that it's a cycle. This is who America is.
This is who America is. I just went over the numbers. By the way, I had a kind of contentious interview with Harvey Levin of TMZ a few years ago. You can go online and take a look at it. About 1.2 million hits. And we were talking about encounters with the police, and I was going over all these numbers. He was talking about systemic racism, and I was going over all the figures. And he said something to the effect of, Larry, you're going by facts and statistics. I'm going by humanity. I don't know what to say to that. And then you got this is America? This is America? Says Bakari Sellers, who's a Democratic strategist. Well, this is America. What about this is America when it comes to anti-Semitism on the part of Black people? Uh-oh. Is he going there? He sure is. Anti-Defamation League does surveys regularly, and they found that Black Americans are anywhere from 2.5 to 3 times more likely to be anti-Semitic than non-Black Gentiles. Do you want to talk about this is America? And recently, some sportscaster or sports broadcaster in Memphis tweeted something that was perceived to be racist, if not racially insensitive, talking about people who drag their knuckles. Memphis was playing against Golden State in an NBA playoff game. And Steve Kerr, the hyper woke coach of the Golden State Warriors, said, hey, this is America. This is America. There is a Rasmussen poll. They're the only ones who ask these questions, not Harris, not Gallup, Rasmussen. And they ask Blacks, Hispanics, Asians, and whites. Of these 4 groups, which is the group most likely to be racist? Whites name Blacks more than any other group. Hispanics name Blacks more than any other group. Asian Americans name Blacks more than any other group. Blacks named Blacks more than any other group. But hey, this is America. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to talk to Pastor Jack Hibbs. People have been asking me, what have you been doing with your life since the election? Well, the truth is I've been enjoying life, riding my bike around town.
Oh, they're not wearing a mask.
I've taken up a little bit of fishing as well.
Elder kills innocent fish.
And I've been posting on social media. Oh, come on. Listen, if you're tired of the censorship as I am, I've actually got some great news for you. Check out epictv.com. It's a brand new censorship-free video platform where you'll find not only my show, but other deep documentaries, great content, and honest movies that bring you the news without all the spin and the false narratives. So, check out epictv.com. I'll see you there.
Elder wastes water.
This is America, right? Speaking of Don Lemon, here's Don Lemon in mid-season form.
And being laundered and mainstreamed on conservative media. What is the responsibility there? What is the responsibility of the people who know better and say and do nothing? Police say the suspect posted a 180-page racist rant online before the attack, where he describes himself as a white supremacist, as a fascist, as an anti-Semite, who believes in the Great Replacement theory. The false belief that white Americans are being replaced by people of other races, even if the gunman wasn't influenced by certain people, right? Even, let's just say he...
Wow. You know, in the latter part of Obama's second term, there were 2 cops in New York that were killed execution style by a black man who posted on social media or told friends his belief that the police were mowing down black people just because they're black, a narrative that's been pushed by people like Don Lemon and CNN. And in Dallas, there were 5 cops that were killed execution style by a black man who also told friends or posted on social media that he believed that the cops were using racial profiling against black people, killing blacks just because they were black. And there were 3 cops in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, also killed by a black man who told friends or posted on social media his belief that the police were engaging in systemic racism against black people. Do people like Don Lemon bear any responsibility for pushing that fake narrative? As I said before, the police kill more unarmed whites than they kill unarmed blacks. Studies have shown, if anything, the police are more hesitant, more reluctant to pull the trigger on a black suspect than a white suspect. It is an absolute lie. And it's not just a lie, because lots of people believe things that are false, that are relatively harmless. This is harmful. There's something called the Ferguson effect, or more recently called the George Floyd effect, where cops are now pulling back because of a fear of being called racist. Bad guys know it, crime goes up, and the people who are hurt the most are the very black people that people like Don Lemon and CNN and Joe Biden purport to care about. There's a man I interviewed named Isaac Kriegman. He was, emphasize was, a data scientist with Thomson Reuters. Left-wing guy, he was a proponent of Black Lives Matter, and then did some research and found out because of the Ferguson effect, because of the George Floyd effect, there were hundreds of excess deaths of black people as a result of this Black Lives Matter lie. So he posted it on the internal digital bulletin board at Thomson Reuters. Human Resources calls him in and says, do you believe this? And he said, I just go where the data takes me. And they asked him to change his conclusions. He refused. He said, this is what the data is saying. The data is saying that because of this Ferguson effect, the police in St. Louis, the police in Baltimore, the police in Chicago, the police in New York are pulling back. And as they're pulling back, there are fewer arrests. As there are fewer arrests, there are more bad guys out on the streets committing crime against the very people that people on the left claims they care about. I'm not going to change my findings. The man got fired. You can check out the interview. It's on YouTube. We interviewed him here on Epoch Times. Now, not to be outdone by Don Lemon is Joy Reid.
Are just a few of the many examples I could give you of an ideology that has gone offline and become the norm for much of the Republican Party, with no figure on the right giving more voice to that bile than the one cited by Congressman Matt Gaetz, who tweeted last year, Tucker Carlson is
the norm of the Republican Party. My mother was a lifelong Democrat. My brother, my late brother, my best friend, lifelong Democrat. He never thought of Republicans as evil. My mother never thought of Republicans as vicious and nasty. She even voted for George W. Bush twice. But if you watch MSNBC, you watch CNN, Republicans are maligned as dastardly, evil, vicious, nasty, racist, sexist, homophobic. Have I left anything out? Have you met Kevin McCarthy? I have. Have you met Mitch McConnell? I have. I don't always agree with them. But my God, racist, sexist, vicious, nasty, evil, hateful. What is this? Do you know there was a time several years ago when on the Hill in DC, they had baseball games and they were integrated. Democrats and Republicans played on the same side, played together. They stopped doing that years ago. When Steve Scalise was shot, he was in a baseball game, but they were all Republicans. They used to play together. Ronald Reagan used to have drinks and smoke cigars with Tip O'Neill, the then Speaker of the House. He was a Democrat, Tip O'Neill. Ronald Reagan was a conservative Republican. But at the end of the day, they broke bread, they smoked cigars, and they talked. What is this? Is it because of ratings? And it's hard for me to not conclude otherwise, because I'll tell you why. MSNBC used to struggle. And they had a host named Keith Olbermann. And his show was doing okay. And then one day, he went on an 8-minute or so rant against George W. Bush about the Iraq War. And not just saying he disagreed with the war, that he thought that Saddam Hussein should not have been taken out, that it would create a vacuum into which bad things would happen. He didn't do that. He just attacked the man's character. And Olbermann's ratings doubled the next day. And I think a light bulb went on in the house, in the executive offices of MSNBC. This is how we have to go. And if you watch MSNBC, and I watch it, it's one angry person of color after another. Whether it's Joy Reid, whether it's a woman named Tiffany Cross on the weekends, whether it's some of their guests. There's a guy named Elie Mystal, Eliemystal. I think that's how he pronounces his name. He's a black guy with white hair. He looks like Nancy, except with white hair. Some of you are old enough to know who Nancy is. Some of you are not. Look it up. And just angry, surly. Josh Hollings was asking Ketanji Brown Jackson about her judicial philosophy and about her cases. And he went on a rant and said Josh Hawley was trying to get her killed. Trying to get her killed by what? By describing her judicial philosophy as out of step, as wrong? What is going on in this country? When did this start? Why? What's the point? I mentioned this the other day. I'm in a restaurant in the west side of Los Angeles. Got there early. My buddy hadn't gotten there yet. There are a couple of ladies at a table next to me. Maybe they felt sorry for me. I'm sitting there by myself. They started talking to me. And then they told me that they'd known each other since the second grade. They were 85 years old, so sweet. And one of them was celebrating her birthday. One called herself a human rights activist, whatever that means. And the other one called herself a psychotherapist. And then about 5 or 10 minutes into our conversation, one of them says, wait a minute. I know who you are. You're that guy that ran for governor. Guess who I voted for? And I said, you didn't vote for me. She said, how do you know that? And I said, let's see. We're on the west side of LA. You're both Jewish. You are a human rights activist. You're a psychotherapist. It doesn't take Columbo to put those to put those facts together. You didn't vote for me. You voted for Gavin Newsom. She said, you're right, I did. And then we started talking about crime. She thought it was awful, talked about personal experiences. We talked about the homelessness, thought it was awful, felt that given the fact that we have enough resources to build low-cost housing and enough resources to provide counseling for those who are drug addicts and who are alcoholics, they should be removed from the street. Same position I took when I ran for governor. We start talking about the quality of public schools here in California, which is abysmal. We're spending more than ever. Results are worse than ever. We start talking about people who are leaving. They all knew people who've left California because of the taxes, because of the spending, because of the regulation, because of the crime, because they couldn't afford a house. By the way, a home in California is 175% above the national average. And I said to them, here we are completing each other's sentences, and yet you did not vote for me. Why? And I said, I'll tell you why, before they could answer. I said, because you just couldn't bring yourself to pull that lever for a Republican. And they admitted it. And she said, what are you drinking? I said, I'm drinking a double vodka with a splash of cran. And she said, it's on me. And I drank that. And she said, and then I had ordered another one. It's on me. And then she paid for my meal. We had a conversation. We connected as human beings. And I said to them, do you have any Republican friends? And they admitted they didn't, let alone conservative Republican friends. I said, so you've never had a conversation like the one we just now had? And they admitted they hadn't. Really? And all of a sudden they bought me drinks. So I went from this caricature, evil, fascist, racist, sexist, homophobic, Nazi, to some interesting guy they had an interesting conversation with, and they bought my drinks and bought my dinner. Why can't we have disagreements over abortion? I'm pro-life. I live in California. I'm also a federalist, and I believe that issues like abortion should be left properly to the states. And we had 2 ballot initiatives, one that would require parental notification if you're a teen before you get pregnant, before you have an abortion. The other would provide waiting periods. And I, of course, supported both those propositions, and they were defeated in California. I didn't call my fellow Californians who voted against me nasty fascists. I think they're wrong. I think they're morally wrong. But it's my job as an American, as a patriot, as a resident of California, and as a pundit to change their mind, not to attack them personally. Can somebody send that memo to Joy Reid and to Bakari Sellers and to Don Lemon? Now, there is an editorial in the LA Times. White supremacy has been normalized, and we let it happen. This is the editorial, not an op-ed piece. There's a difference. An editorial is the official position of the newspaper, a newspaper, by the way, whose columnists referred to me as the black face of white supremacy. You've been warned. That was a headline. Another one referred to my views as white supremacist. And then the LA Times had the nerve, have an editorial about a councilman who decided not to run for re-election. He had taken a couple of positions that his constituents didn't like. He voted against a law that would make it illegal for you to camp on the public square, a law that, in my opinion, is redundant, but he voted against it. And it angered people in his constituency, in his district. So he decided not to run again. And the LA Times headline said, vitriol in politics is chasing out good people. Vitriol in politics? The same newspaper who hired a columnist that referred to moi as the black face of white supremacy is denouncing vitriol in politics? I mean, talk about chutzpah. Anyway, white supremacy has become normalized. We let it happen. We're going to go over this editorial when we come back. Now, I want you to switch over to Epoch TV to continue watching the live stream of this episode, Epoch TV. And we come back, we're going to talk to Pastor Jack Hibbs of the Calvary Church in Chino Hills. I'll be right back.
Violent crime is way up, plaguing our local communities right now.